Good day, everybody. This is Jason Jimenez with the Bold Saviors, making the impossible possible in business. And today I have a very dear friend and a business partner of mine by the name of Nader Safinya. And I really am looking forward to for you to get to know him, knowing who he is and what he does and how special he is to me, that I can assure you that the journey that we will learn from him will be one that you could basically answer a lot of questions for yourself. So Nader, thank you for being here today. So for the people who do not know who you are and don't know what you're about, give us a little insight.
This question for me is always an interesting one because, you know, the root of where are you from is just difficult for me to answer. I always answer with, what does that mean? Are you asking me where I was born? Where did I grow up? Where did I come from just now? So it's never easy. I was born in the U.S. My family is Iranian. I've never even been to Iran. I grew up overseas, traveled through France, Indonesia, the UAE, stayed in the American school system my whole life. Ended up in undergrad in California, was there for 14 years. So I've always had sort of issue with, I don't know if issue is the right word, but I've never had any roots. I've never felt at home anywhere. Even in San Francisco, where I lived for 14 years, I never felt at home. I felt good in my apartment, but never culturally speaking, societally speaking. I always sort of felt removed wherever I've been. And I don't know. That's neither here nor there. It's neither good or bad. I don't think it's just positive or negative. It just is. One thing it did, however, teach me inherently was just how to adapt. And instead of trying to, not even try to, the notion of connecting myself to a place was never a thing. It was like, how do I identify myself and how do I exist as an identity within any sort of crowd when I can't answer the question, where are you from?
Yeah.
So it sort of became about, well, who am I as an individual? What am I? How do I stand out? And over time, through behavior, through interactions, through people's reactions and so on, I realized that in a nutshell, I'm honest and reliable. And that ended up sort of being my thing, my identity, always throughout my life, is that people can count on me and always to be honest and to show up. Even when I started working in my 20s and so on and actually entered the workspace, people who didn't like me would say, just go ask Nader, because even if you guys don't get along, he'll definitely tell you what he's thinking. So at least they'd come up to me and be like, I know we don't get along, but I know you'll tell me the truth. So this always carried with me. So yeah, I don't know if that might even be why what's sort of driven me into branding and brand identity, which is all about understanding the core of why things and people and places exist. Now that I think about it, I've never articulated it like that before. So that could be a thing.
I think today is a therapy session. And I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
I would agree with that because I think that part of someone being able to adapt, you're either thrown into it, or you have no choice, or you're in a situation where you are forced to do it without will, but still have, choice.
Yeah.
And you did it. And in some cases, it sounded like you felt like at some points early on, you probably had to reinvent yourself, or you had the opportunity to reinvent yourself if you didn't like the previous version.
Yeah.
Would that be?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I was aware of that. I was very young. I mean, one thing that happens, most kids or anyone who moved around a lot, we call them army brats or diplomat kids or, oil babies. I'm an oil baby. Yep. It was always like one of these three. I never, ever envied the military brats because they moved every year. I can't even imagine what that's like. And I was weak academically. So every time we moved, it took me about a year to sink into the academic world, the new academic world, because, you know, making friends and all this took some time. I was an introvert when I was a kid, like totally was into my art, and I would illustrate and draw and all this.
Were you always creative?
Yeah, I was always creative. It was my escape. It would be the way that I would withdraw into myself, because I also experienced, you know, we moved to Paris, France from Ridgefield, Connecticut. Okay, and I was like 3 years old. So that was its own thing. I don't even really remember that period of my life. And then we moved to Jakarta, Indonesia in the 90s. And when I was 7 years old, very corrupt government at the time, and like just kind of a crazy place. You know, a lot of poverty. I'd never seen anything like that in my life before. And I could experience, I didn't really know what I was seeing.
How old were you then?
I was 7.
Okay, got it.
I was 7 to 9.5, 10. And, you know, I could feel what was happening, but I didn't understand it. There were like lepers in the streets and between the cars and the lanes. It was so crowded and all this. And, it was just a way, and I was like witnessing human violence and human, you know, just human horror. And my art was a place that I sort of went to escape, and ended up creating even more bizarre and horrible things that sort of made real life kind of a joke to me.
Yeah.
And like, it was my way of coping with that.
Yeah.
Which I realized way later in life. And then we moved to the UAE, which is one of the richest places on the planet. You know, so we went from that to this, and now we're experiencing, you know, all kinds of luxuries and so on. And it was just a trip. And so, yeah, I could have theoretically reinvented myself, every time, because in those days we're not texting or emailing or whatever. It was you lost friends like that. Yeah. When you moved, they were gone. Nobody was coming back.
Yeah.
And so I had to remake friends. To your point, I had to adapt or withdraw, and I ended up adapting. Luckily, you know, I was personable enough that kids were drawn to me.
Yeah.
That was an advantage. I don't even know why, but that worked out in my favor. And I think that's what it was. I don't think it was ever about reinventing myself. I think it was always just staying, not even conscientiously, just like inherently true to what I was.
Yeah.
Which was a explorer, a dreamer, sort of just tried to be honest and a little bit withdrawn. And then when I got to high school, it was a whole different story.
So mom and dad obviously were a big influence in that, because they had to not only prepare you, but also guide you through these times, right? And you're really close with your parents. I know that. What would you say would be some of the things that, when you were making these shifts, were the things that they would share with you or tell you to prepare in being comfortable in doing that, right? And kind of putting yourself out there, right? Meeting new friends, you know, having new conversations, and yet still let you be free and independent.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am blessed with my folks. They have always been sort of like, do what feels right, but we grew up with manners at home.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always called them table manners. My mom literally trained me how to open doors for her, and how to, you know, protect her, like how to be at the table, how to be a gentleman, and all this, like literally how to eat food, how to not eat like an animal. There's an old story that she always tells. When I was a kid, about 3 or something, I was eating poorly at the table, and she sent me to the basement. And she said, if you're going to eat like an animal, go eat in the basement. And then apparently, I don't remember this, but apparently I came back up with an empty plate. And she's like, are you ready to join us now? And I said, no, can I get more and go back upstairs? And she's like, this kid just completely pulled a 180 on me. She's like, no, get your ass up here. Eat like a human. I'm not sending you back down there. But apparently that sort of colored my in another innate attitude where like I feel good when I'm alone because I don't have to adhere to anybody's rules. No, they've always been very go figure it out and screw up kind of a mentality. You know, my folks were very big on letting us screw up when we were young, like when we were in the protection of them, of their home and so on. My dad used to tell me in high school, he's like, I don't want you to graduate and go away and then start doing stupid things and get arrested, like, and be 18 and charged as an adult and this and this and that. It's like, if you're going to do stupid things, do them while you're a minor under our protection so we can help you and deal with it and so on. Yeah. And then, you know, hopefully later you won't repeat them. And actually that worked out. So, you know, there was just a lot of like exploration and like deal with, which now that I'm talking about it out loud is apparent in my management style. Yeah. I let people fail first instead of just trying to bark orders and lectures and stuff, lessons at them, because I don't know who they are or how they're going to behave or whatever. Might as well see what happens and then talk about it when you need to.
And that was a lesson that was shared with you, whether you knew it or not, by mom and dad.
Yeah.
What else did it teach you that you apply today?
Well, again, to be honest, to be reliable, that comes 100% from the reliability is 100% my dad. I mean, my mom is very reliable, but it's the work ethic side of it. My work ethic comes from my dad. So this is what I always say. I say my dad taught me how to build a life, and my mom taught me how to live that life, how to give value to that life. You know, so he taught me about, you know, structure and foundation and order. And, you know, just, I crave that. I crave order and structure. And my mom taught me how to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, how to actually be free within that structure.
And so when you first took the leap of leaving the nest, so to speak, what'd you do? Where'd you go?
Well, like, so again, I was in the American school system in high school, but it was in Paris in France. So when I graduated, I applied to like 6 schools when I was in high school across the U.S., all the way from Maine all the way to Oregon. And I got accepted to 2. One was in San Francisco. The other one was also in California, across the bay in Moraga. And I was like, I'm not going to a California suburb from Paris. I'm going to San Francisco. So that's what made, like, that was that decision. It was super easy. Like, that transition's not going to be cool. So I'm going to the city.
It's interesting because your statement is very, very... It was the answer to a post you just recently put out there of why do anybody make a decision?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was 100% a gut feeling. Yeah. I was like, nope, this just sounds like it's going to be horrible. I'm not even going to try. That's what I did, though. I mean, I went to a whole other world all of a sudden. I hadn't lived in the States since I was born. You know, the U.S. is a very different place from the rest of the world. And in many, many, many ways.
And so you went to school there, and you studied what?
Well, I started undecided, but I graduated with a graphic design degree.
And, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
When you graduated, were you still interested in it?
In graphic design?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I graduated, they customized my degree in a way. It was a degree in graphic design, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic design with an emphasis in sculpture. So I had it wasn't a minor in sculpture. I didn't get 2 degrees. I got 1 degree with an emphasis in sculpture, which was really interesting because I wanted to be a toy designer when I was in college. Okay. I wanted to actually design toys for children, like educational toys.
Did you want to be big?
Did I what?
Do you remember the Tom Hanks?
Did I want to
that inspire you?
I don't know, maybe. I just loved toys growing up myself. And even I graduated in 2005. I graduated early, actually, 3.5 years. And already by then, the notion of the digital world and video games and so on overpowering, child upbringing in the West was starting to bother me. And I could foresee all this disconnect from humans and social capacities and so on, which is happening now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was inevitable. But companies like Leapfrog back in the day, I don't know if you remember that company, but they were all about educational toys and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a direction I wanted to go in. It didn't work out, which, again, neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But the graphic design degree definitely was something that I kept as an interest, and it was what pushed me in the direction that I went, because it was. Let me back up. Look, when you're in school as a fine artist, in those days especially, it was like, what are you going to be? The next Da Vinci? The next Dali? No. So, who Picasso, who actually made it while they were alive?
Yeah.
No. That was so far-fetched for so many people, and more power to those who did it, who the struggling artist, was and continues to be real. It's a lot easier now because of Web 2 and social media.
Yeah.
And thank God for them. The younger artists just don't really know what it was. We had to find coffee shops and places that would hang our art and whatever. It was a crazy hustle. So a lot of us went into...
Unnecessary, though, one.
Yeah, a necessary one that most people, honestly, and I use that word deliberately, most fine artists didn't become fine artists.
Yeah.
Who made a living doing fine art. They ended up doing it as a hobby. Maybe some of them became teachers or otherwise. But it was, it's always been the whole struggling artist archetype is a very real thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of us went into graphic design because it was a more structured and ordered, you have a path in front of you. You can actually make a living. You can continue doing this, but make a living. It's not art per se,
Yep.
but it's close enough.
When did you get to implement your talents of your education where it really, you were acknowledged for it?
Oh, almost right away. My first job out of college was actually at Pixar. I was part of the first internship program between Pixar and USF, my university, because our professor at the time, Pamela Blotner, our sculpture teacher, taught at Pixar. And so she organized this internship program, and I was the second of three of us. The third one ended up ruining it for everyone. But I was the second one. And it ended up being really cool. At first, I was doing an internship, working in the art studio at Pixar. And then when I graduated, I ended up getting a job there in the archiving department. And actually, this is really funny. When it was the end of the summer, so the internship was coming to an end. And I was walking around telling all the superiors in my department, which was pretty much everybody, I want a job here. I'll clean toilets. I don't care what it is. Just give me something. I want to stay here. I'm sorry. It was the end of the semester and I wanted a summer job. So I was like, I want a job for the summer. I want to stay here. I just want to be around this stuff. I want to be around the culture, the art, the everything. And they were like, no, we don't have anything. We don't have anything. And then one of the last projects that my boss gave me was to clean up her assistant's office, to organize it. She was like, Liz is too busy. She's always on the phone, but she needs her office is a mess. And it was such a mess there. She was like, you got to help her clean this. And I said, okay. I mean, that's all I ever said was, okay, no problem. I got it. Let's do it. And to your point, I wanted to do it. There was nothing in my brain saying, don't do this. And so I remember going in there, and again, she was on the phone. So for like the 2 minutes she was off the phone, I said, I'm going to make 2 piles. It's going to be garbage and keep. So I'm going to show you something and you point. And whatever goes in the garbage, I'm throwing out. Whatever I keep, I'm going to organize. But to me, all of this is garbage. So you need to tell me what goes where. And she had trinkets and all kinds of Pixar, fan stuff everywhere and little toys and trophies and this and that. Long story short, I polished that place. I mean, it was so clean and reorganized and everything. I vacuumed, I dusted the shelves, I Windexed everything, like just squeaky clean. I went underneath the desk and all this stuff. And then my last day of that semester, I was eating lunch and the head of archives came to my table in the cafeteria and she goes, so I hear you've been, she goes, I saw what you did to Liz's office. That was amazing. And I go, thank you. She said, are you still looking for a job? I heard you were looking for a job. I said, yeah. She said, you want to come work for the archives? Because that's all that is. It's just organization. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. She said, great. I'll see you Monday. And then that was that. And then during the summer, after my first 6 months there, they ended up hiring me. My first 6 months or 8 months or something within that first year, I actually branded the department, the Pixar Living Archives, for various reasons that I can get into later. But that was an immediate carryover of the work that I was doing in school. That was like 6 months after I graduated.
All just because of the fact that you were hungry to learn.
Yeah.
And to stay in an environment that allowed you to be you, or at least to be close to you.
Yeah, exactly. To be close to me. I ended up leaving because they wouldn't hire me full time after 2 years. I was basically on a temp level, making $11 an hour in the Bay Area.
Yep.
No benefits, no nothing. And I kept being like, are you going to hire me? When would you hire me? Da, 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 da. They never did. And then on my exit interview was great. Because they were like, your job description is different since you've been here. It's changed. I go, yeah, no kidding. And so they were like, well, what did you do for us for the last 2 years? I mean, the list was just endless. And they were like, how are we ever going to replace you? I said, don't. I'm literally sitting right here. Just hire me. They were like, we can't. I said, okay, good luck. And that was the end of that. I was 23.
What was the biggest takeaway from that moment that you still are carrying on to yourself?
From the exit interview?
From that moment of experience in that time frame.
Oh.
At Pixar. What did you, outside of a life lesson that you just taught us, what else would you say for you have you taken from there and have always somewhat shown up in everything you've done?
Man, honestly, when I think about that time, I actually think I gave more than I learned. Like, because I was like, my onboarding was essentially like, this is the tool we use. This is our numbering system. And this is that. It was like, basically you go in, it's library sciences. So you go into a library and they're like, this is how we number stuff. This is where we input it. This is how we put it on the shelves. That's basically what it is.
Yep.
The rest is you got to be organized, just tight, super tight, organized, structured, whether it's your memory or how you take notes or whatever, like figure it out. And because there isn't 1,000 ways to do something, you just have to make sure it's really, really tight and efficient. And I brought all that to the point where when I started, I'll never forget this. It was awesome. It was such a good feeling because I was given a task that was assumed would take me, I think, a week to complete or something, a week to 8 to 10 days or something like that. And I finished it in 3 days. And I came back to my boss's office and I just said, because to me, it wasn't crazy. I was like, what else do you want me to do? Just like that. And she goes, what do you mean? I don't understand. And I go, what else do you want me to do? And she goes, well, did you finish the other thing? I said, yeah, I finished it. Did you put it in the database? I said, yeah. she's looking at me like, how is that possible? And I'm going, it's all in there. You can just look at it. And so she goes, she checks it. She looks at me and she goes, I don't even know how you did that. Go back to your desk. I'll call you in a minute. And so according to them, I was like, I sped everything up and they started picking up. They were moving faster. And I've hired people like that myself ever since then. I've hired juniors who light a fire under our butts and we're like, because they're super hungry and they just want to go. And we're like, okay, this is great. We got to move now too. So I don't know. It's just, there was a lot of like proactivity that came from me during those times, which was just young confidence. But it's something that I try to tap into often. I need to when I want to get away from the bureaucracy of certain business conversations. And I'm like, we need to just go. Let's just do. And stop asking for permission. Just go. Because it will be better for everybody. I don't know. That's an interesting question.
I'm asking because in the way you shared that journey, that part of your journey. Well, let me ask you this first. What picture were they working on at that time?
Oh, while I was there, it was Cars had just been released. Ratatouille. It was Ratatouille. Actually, they work on a few simultaneously, but I think the movie that came out either while I was there, the newest one was Ratatouille.
I'm bringing this up because in what you shared, even in the glimpse of the conversations that you were having with these individuals, you've given me the impression, and I would feel confident saying that you changed the culture and the dynamics of how people worked and performed, and by virtue was somewhat infectious, which impacted into being the delivery of Cars and Ratatouille, which were some of the most successful films that they've ever produced.
Yeah.
Did you give yourself credit for that?
I don't know how much impact I had on those movies, but I definitely had impact on our processes, on the archives process, and even reputation. I'll give you something simple. We would lend out artwork. I mean, that's what the archives are for. People reference old work.
Yeah.
Especially in animation and stuff, so they don't have to redo a lot of work because it costs money to redo certain sequences and so on. So they come and borrow all kinds of old archived material, whether it's photo references or sketches or sculptures or whatever.
Yeah.
And there were all these issues when people didn't respect the artwork. They didn't respect, the material. And this is original artwork. You could take an eraser to this stuff. This is why it was so amazing to me. As an artist, it was like, the kid in a candy factory. It was amazing how close. My drawing skills improved more in those 2 years than they did in my entire life, just by copying the way that everyone was drawing, not by being in class, just literally looking at what the best in the world were doing and just copying it. It was crazy. And
life lesson there, by the way.
I'm sorry?
That was a life lesson.
Yeah.
That you just shared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet people don't necessarily take into consideration.
Yeah. So I created this whole lending system. I created our new logo and our new branding and so on. And I used stencils, I cut out a stencil on a cardboard thing and I drew them on these very unique boxes. So our entire, I forget what these are called. They're these gray boxes that are made for filing and archiving. They have the little wire coils on the side. I ordered a bunch of cream colored ones specifically for lending. So if people see these colored boxes with our big ass logo on it, they know those are fragile boxes that belong nowhere else. And they can't put coffee on them. They can't put things on top of these boxes. Everything has to go back. I printed a little slip of rules it was all branded, all stenciled with Sharpies and everything. And it changed how people treated the work,
Yeah.
treated the artwork.
Yeah.
It changed the entire lending system. And I created that. And like I got it approved by my boss and everything, but I wrote it all down because of how I was trained to intake art and file the art and so on. That was really cool. Like I was really, really proud of that.
And so when you moved on, because they didn't see or have availability for anything for you, what was your next phase?
Well, I was, I got hired. Then I went for an actual graphic design job.
Okay.
I was looking for a graphic design job.
And when you and so through all the jobs and the careers that you've done as far as working as a graphic designer, and it also sounds like you were being molded, regardless if you knew it or not, in the world of culture and in the world of branding, in the world of discipline, and in the world of attention to detail. Like it's everything you've shared from the moment you started talking to up to this moment has been one life lesson after another that has been compounding and compounding on top. And I would say not even overlapping. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
right? That ends up creating who you are today.
Yeah.
So where did your entrepreneurial spirit kick in? And what triggered that?
Yeah. Well, first I want to just address the molding comment is interesting because, I believe wholeheartedly that we as people, as humans, we sort of gravitate towards the things that interest us, even if we can't articulate what that is, right? Like, even if it's not something tangible, you're drawn to a certain light. You could be in a class that's trying to teach you one thing, but you learn something else as a consequence of being there because something happened while you were there. Or, like in my case, what you just said resonated so deeply with me because throughout my life experiences, which I've had many, I kept pulling on these very specific elements that always pertain to intercultural relationships, that pertain to people, places, and things, and how they're connected. And there was always this innate curiosity and desire to understand what sort of ties everything together. Why there is a thread that creates connection between everything. This room alone, I always say, even inanimate objects have conversations. We walk into a room with no people, we feel a certain way.
Yeah.
If it's crowded, meaning if it's crammed, if the ceilings are low or if they're high or if the lighting sucks or is warm or cold or whatever, we feel a certain way because there's an energy in there.
100%.
And these things are communicating with each other and with us and so on. Just because there's no human there or noise doesn't mean there isn't communication.
Yeah.
So what was your question specifically?
The one I just asked was around where did your entrepreneurial kick in?
So, with that kind of a thought process and curiosity, that always pushed me towards always saying like, what if this, what if that, why isn't this like that? Why isn't that like that? Just constantly questioning things, which most of us do anyway. I mean, humans' greatest strength and difference in our known species is our ability to question meaning, right? So like,
we're meaning-making machines.
We're meaning-making machines. If something doesn't make sense, we try to figure out why and do something about it, at least for the most part.
Yep.
So, even when I started working, even in school, I was always told, like, you should be a teacher. You should be this. Like, I had a way of explaining things to my own peers that apparently simplified things. I always remember my own peers being like, don't you love the way he just explains things? He made that so much simpler.
Yeah.
And then people are like, wait, that was all that was? And I'm going, Yeah, that's all that was. And so there was, again, it was inherent. It wasn't something proactive or conscientious. It was, or conscious. It was, I had this arbitrary milestone, like many of us. You know, when I was in my 20s, I'm like, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to have my own business. And that was always in my mind, but it was never like, what is that business going to be?
Yep.
It was just kind of like, I want to have this independence, and I want to run a team, and I want to work with people who I love to work with, who, you know, are bought into what I'm trying to do and this vision, and we can work together to accomplish it, and blah, blah, blah. And that was like the designer in me wanting to have these collaborative sort of groups. But as far as the entrepreneurial spirit, if you're talking about, you know, a spirit of ownership, guidance, and leadership, then that's always sort of been with me. And I think it was.
But never you were on until you chose that one area, right?
Well, I think it was awakened even as a team player, in my first job, like first design job.
So they were giving you the skills to build up to the point where, like, okay, I got this part, I got this part, I got this part. Now I can.
Yeah.
And I should.
Because I became a creative director in that job.
Yeah.
I climbed the ladder. And as a creative director, I mean, there's an entrepreneurial spirit. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to, this is the thing with this word. So you can cultivate organizations of people who have an entrepreneurial spirit in the sense that they bring into the team atmosphere and the team environment a spirit of ideas, of pushing the envelope, of being like, why don't we do something totally different? Why don't we, you know, think innovatively? Why don't we whatever? They're coming from a place of a business development, entrepreneurial sort of mindset.
Yeah.
And even if it's not necessarily for their own company, but they have that same drive. It doesn't mean they're ever going to be entrepreneurs in the traditional sense of the word, but it's a mindset that many company leaders, even especially today, are trying to cultivate because they know the power behind that kind of talent. And a reason that many of us in our senior leadership entrepreneurial positions don't get hired as employees is because they don't want to ruffle feathers. Because they know we're going to go in there and start moving shit around, and they don't want that.
Yeah.
It's actually a big problem. It's a problem that I'm trying to solve because there are many, many talented people out there who do have entrepreneurial mindsets, but they don't want to start a business. They know what that takes. They want to go work for somebody, but they also need some room to play.
Yeah. Sense of autonomy, but freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
did that answer your question when that was triggered?
It did for me.
Okay.
It did for me because call it for whatever people may want to call it, but it's like as if life or whatever higher calling was already laying out the roadmap for you to have all these abilities and skills and experiences in your life, in your path, to be able to say, okay,
yeah,
I'm ready for whatever, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you didn't need to know. I don't think who the hell knows why they want to start their business at the beginning? They don't. They just they identify as, I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, is like, just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, every business entrepreneur or business owner that I know, the one common thing that they always talk about is stop thinking, just do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what was that first just do moment for you?
To start my business specifically? Interestingly enough, it was another kind of this fell into it moment. Like you keep describing, I went and got a master's, after that creative director, job. I was there for about 9 years. By the time I was 32, I went to get another degree in design management. When I came back from that, and I say came back because I went and got it in Munich, in Germany. And when I finished, I went to New York because I left my life in California. I closed everything down. I sold my apartment. I sold the car. I sold everything. I just left. And for various circumstances, I couldn't stay in Germany, even though I wanted to, and decided to give New York a shot. It was always on my horizon anyway, and my sister lives there. So I went and stayed with her for a while, but I was looking for work. And again, the whole, by the time I'm 40 arbitrary milestone was just there. It was like, oh, by the time I'm 40, I'll start my own thing. But I very, very clearly wanted more experience in the field. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to learn more. I still wanted to learn. I wanted to be able to go out there on my own with just an arsenal of know-how. And as we all know now, that's never, ever really the case until you're actually doing it. You might know all this stuff. This is why we tell undergrads who are business majors, like, you're wasting your time. You should just go work. And I started doing freelance, because I couldn't get a job. I was applying and I wasn't getting any bites or anything. So I started freelancing. Former colleagues and clients came to my rescue, and suddenly I was able to pay rent in New York. And I was like, okay, well, this is happening. I'm moving out of my sister's place. I'm getting my own place in New York City, and it's okay. So might as well just start it now.
Yeah.
And that was like, just do it. Just do it now. Yeah. Forget applying to jobs. Just go. You're doing it.
Sometimes those difficult moments are really the gift.
Yeah. And something happens. The point is, it starts working out because you're not even thinking, you're just doing it. Because you're like, I don't really have another choice right now. I need to just keep doing this. And the other choice, that statement upsets people for real reasons, fairly so, because there's always another choice. But if you have a plan, if you have a vision like me, like I wanted to be in design, I wanted to be in branding somehow, start my own agency. These things were all, I could see them in my mind. So if it was just if I was hitting rock bottom and I needed a job for money, I wouldn't be looking for those jobs.
Yeah.
I'd be going to find, a retail job or whatever job, something that could hire me quickly and would give me cash today.
Yeah.
I have had fortune though, and I was able to find work in the field that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And make money. It wasn't a lot of money. I made $42,000 a year in New York City doing the freelancing.
Yeah.
Which is nothing. And still paying $1,700 and whatever dollars on rent in a studio in the Bronx. So, I'm keeping $1,000 or something a month.
Yeah.
Just to eat food and play around with. It worked, and I had a lot of fun. It was also during COVID. But, you just do it because other things aren't working and it somehow feels right.
And so you go through this process, and then you have this one moment when you're driving by and you see a rabbit, a frog.
Oh, the name for this guy, Blackribbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that to give the audience an understanding, because the one thing that, whether you realize this or not, the questions of our conversation, my commitment to you was I needed people to understand that you were born, given, and shared experiences that ultimately is what the gift that you give to every client that you work with.
Right.
Your attention to detail, your passion and inspiration of understanding the why, and yet being able to articulate it and taking out fluff so that you can fit something like this while saying something like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Blackribbit. So I was in Munich when that kind of landed on me. Because again, it was an arbitrary milestone. I'll keep saying that, where I was thinking I will one day have an agency, and that'll be when I'm 40. And it was always an agency, and it was always a creative agency. And these parts of it were real. And, when I was 20 or something, I started freelancing just for extra cash, for money. It was actually right after school. And, I named my little freelance endeavor NS Design. It wasn't registered or anything like that. It was just what I called it for years. And then in 2017, I was still freelancing. I freelanced for that whole time, for like 10, 12 years, again, just to keep things exciting and diverse and all this. And then when I was in Munich, I was on a streetcar and I was going somewhere, and I passed by a tattoo parlor called Blackribbit, and I misread it as Blackribbit. And by the time I did a double take, I mean, it was too late, and I was already immersed in just this sea of tree frogs and different species of frogs in my psyche, which was crazy. And the first thing I thought of was Blackribbit would be a really cool name for an agency. That was my thought, just because it was weird, and I've always kind of gravitated towards the weird and deranged and all this. He's like, look at my sketchbooks from when I was a kid. They're crazy. And so I was like, this is weird. It's a weird name. It's interesting. It evokes different kinds of thoughts and imagery. And so I pocketed that because I had NS Design, and Blackribbit was just so much cooler than NS Design. It sounds so boring and old. And when the time came to launch the business, I started going down this rabbit hole of symbology for frogs and seeing what they were all about. And I learned that interculturally, pretty much across the board, frogs represent empathy, guidance, compassion, the wisdom to empower oneself, transformation, sometimes transcendence. And so I thought, okay, well, that's interesting, because those are the attributes by which I define myself, or at least try to live my life through. In these specific attributes, guidance, compassion, to have guidance and compassion, and also how I conduct business, as a matter of fact. So I thought it just fit. Everything just kind of fit. It was like in the stars that this name and this symbolism actually become my business. And so I named the frog, which became my mascot, Kismet, which means fate. It also is the same word in Persian.
And so if somebody were to ask you, so what does Blackribbit do? And what is it? What's its mission? What would you say?
So Blackribbit is a culture branding agency, and we want to change society's relationship with the workplace. And what I mean when I say culture brand is we basically help companies become people-first organizations who are putting the quality of life above just selling products and services in a way that reflects their company culture directly in their marketing, to help the market actually get what they see, so that there's a very clear line between what a organization is talking about and what the world is actually receiving.
As you said that, I was vividly in the office where you were cleaning this woman's desk, and then you see the before and after.
Yeah.
That's what you've built.
What?
For others.
The before and after, the clearing of the clutter. Yeah. Yeah. Clarity. I mean, our mantra is your purpose clarified. So we help people identify who they are and what they are, uncover that aspect of themselves, their core truth, the thing they can lean into no matter what, the thing that drives all their actions, their decisions, their behaviors, and so on. When I talk about branding, I always bring everything back to the individual. Like if we were talking about a person as a brand, your brand is your naked self.
Yep.
It's who you are. It's who you always are, regardless of where you're sitting, who you're talking to, or whatever.
Yep.
And the clothes you wear are essentially your marketing, like how you want to be perceived in that moment.
So what do you say? Because to individuals that say, well, I do a few things actually. I don't just do one thing. And how do I actually create a brand for that? Because it's real, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'll let you answer first real quick because I have an opinion on this. I want to see what your thought is.
Sure.
Why are they in their way? Because it's not that hard, in my opinion.
Why are they in their own way?
Yeah.
Well, because they want to showcase, they're proud of what they are able to do.
The 4 or 15 things that they do.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. It's not something that everybody does. It's, if you're capable of doing a lot of things and doing them all well, which is rare, there's an old rule our dads would tell us, like, do one thing and do only that. Be the best at that thing. Don't do 100 things because you can never do 100 things as good as you can do that one thing. Right? Or Bruce Lee's, don't fear the guy who knows 10,000 kicks. Fear the guy who knows one kick and has practiced it 10,000 times.
Right.
It's the same thing because you're proud of it. You're like, I spent all this time and energy and whatever learning how to do all these things, even if it wasn't necessarily my own decision. I just learned and picked up all these things and now I can do all these things. So I want to do all these things. And some people inherently want to help others. And they're like, I just want to help everyone do everything all the time. But
how do you create a brand around that?
Well, you can't. You can't create a brand around that specific thing. I mean, even Amazon, which pretty much sells everything, doesn't talk about serving everyone all the time for everything.
Yep.
And the way that I approach that kind of concept is when you have so many things to offer, is that's when branding as an emotional component really becomes the thing that you have to focus on. So if Jason runs, 5 businesses and he does 5 things for all his customers, including operations, financial services, risk assessment, design, sales, whatever you want to call it. Well, now you're talking to 5 different kinds of people who all want different things. Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure that they're the ones hearing you? Because you don't think about the services that they want. You think about what kind of people they are and what kind of people you want to associate yourself with and who they want to associate themselves with. Mm-hmm. So now you start talking about the experience that they're going to have when they interact with you, not from a service-oriented perspective, a perspective of selling something, but a perspective of interacting with you.
Yeah.
What is that going to achieve for them?
Yeah.
And what is the outcome of that? So if they spend 5 minutes with Jason, how will they feel?
Yeah.
What will they get out of it? And then you can start narrowing down, okay, well, now that you found the guy you want to work with, now you can talk about what you actually want him to do for you.
Yep.
That's how I approach it. That's how a lot of my peers approach it.
And do you feel that, I think if you take someone who has more than one thing that they're up to or that they're doing, if you weed out all of the fluff and you really get to the core of, there's a commonality in all aspects of it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you have to be competent in these spaces. You have to be able to solve a solution. And you have to be willing and able to know that you are not necessarily the person to do the do. And as long as the individuals understand that, then you end up shifting who you are overall in time. As long as the message is consistent.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, I definitely agree that if you kind of trim the fat off of everything, that you will reach a common thread across everything, which is what we're talking about. You know, the experience of interacting with you is always going to be the same, regardless of your output. The problem, it's not a problem. The challenge is getting someone to focus on the things that actually make them great.
Yes.
You know, because we can all do a lot of things.
And that's not necessarily them telling you, but it's other people who are already experiencing that, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's a huge realization that many take a long time to reach. Because so we all see ourselves in a certain lens, through a certain lens.
Yes.
Right? Which is why in what I do, you know, I can talk to you about you all day long. But until I go get those statements corroborated by others, then everything you're telling me is basically just an opinion. That's your opinion. Yeah, exactly. And it could be somewhat informed because of experiences, but even, you know, a lot of us tend to sort of color ourselves in the way that we want to be seen. Mm-hmm. And to the point where we fabricate stories.
Yeah.
We actually fabricate history.
Yeah.
Right? Like a great exercise is two people's memory of the same event. Right? Like, what do you remember? What do I remember? And sometimes they're like, this is why, you know, in interrogations, they do that. They separate people to ask them what the hell happened.
That's right.
It's the same concept. So if you're talking to people's friends or colleagues or whatever, and you ask very specific questions that get them to talk about that person in both a positive and potentially negative light, you start reaching a very clear truth. And then it helps them and it helps me uncover what that is. So we can get down to something narrow. To answer your question, if someone's doing 100 things, we can figure out, okay, what are like the 3 things that you do the best out of all those things? What do people actually know you for? And that's not trivial when you do 100 things.
No, and it's interesting you say that because of the fact that I think that you could probably look at any successful company, regardless of size or how much money they make. And if you really boil it down to, they only do really 1, maybe 2 things that are just phenomenal, which is what drives the company to be where it's at.
Correct.
Everything else is a trial and error, internal, external assessments, or a help to trying to fix it, right?
Yeah.
But that one thing is what drives it. So if I hear you correctly, let's find that one thing and let's brand you around that, because it's inevitably unquestionable and no one can deny it. It is fact.
Yeah.
And that's what you bring out in people.
Yeah.
So what's that journey look like for you? So somebody comes to you and says, hey, I heard about you as being the branding guy. You're a branding and culture expert, right? What's that steps look like? I mean, granted, I've been through the process already, so I asked this question already knowing the answer. And yet, it was such a huge, impactful, I want to say life-changing for me, but a really heartfelt appreciation to your trade. Because I can tell you, I've talked to many agencies in the past. And it's never, and I'm a deep person by nature.
Sure.
The why of understanding why things do and why things are and why things must is critical, because we don't do anything without it, right? And I found that you take it to that depth, which is probably why I resonated with it.
Yeah.
Take me through that. Share with the audience what that process is.
Yeah, I will. It's what's amazing about the process is that it never resonates deeply enough until someone actually goes through it.
Not until they see it themselves.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's why it's actually a very hard sell. I'm going to be very honest about that. It's something that it's like therapy. People are like, I know I need it. I'm ready for it. I don't know what it's going to feel like, but I know I need it and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the process is very much about just digging deep. Again, my peers, we all have our methods. There's many different methods in design, in study design. And because when I say study design, because you're designing the study that you're going to conduct on your audience, on your client, on the organization, on its people, and so on. It is very much a study. So, I believe wholeheartedly in the classics, interviews and observational studies. Workshops are very useful. Focus groups is a 50-50. A lot of people are like, nope, totally skewed, totally biased. Others, will lean into it for like product testing, but it just depends. But surveys, interviews, and observational studies are always my top choices because you can really, it's a great way to break down walls. And I'm not talking about a 10-minute interview. I'm talking about an hour-long interview. We'll go in an organization. The most we've done is talk to like 45 people, and we'll do that in a month. And it's an hour with each person. That's 45 hours, just talking to people. And it's through a very specific series of questions that's designed overall in a similar framework, but specific to that organization, to that, what we're trying to uncover there. Our rule is always ask the right questions to get to the right answers. Otherwise you're just asking arbitrary questions. Not to mention ask questions in a way that helps people articulate how they're honestly feeling. So, for example, you will have templated questionnaires that actually say, ask the employees what is the mission statement of this organization. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's a memorization test. That's not a question of how they feel about what the objective of this place is. So you're scaring them by asking them that. And they'll never give you the right answer. Some of them may have it memorized, but they're going for like to be it's like some formulated thing. But so we just say, what do you think the objective of this company is? Like, why does it exist in the world? Mm-hmm. What is it trying to do? What is it trying to change? What is it trying to accomplish? And then they go into these broader terms, which then gets them specific, because then they go, oh, well, who are we trying to impact? What is this even for? What are we trying to do? And then they start going in that direction. And now it's not formulaic. And you'll start seeing the patterns. When you ask, 10, 15, 20 people the same question, you'll start noticing patterns or discrepancies. So that's what we do. We go through a line of questioning, get very intimate with our clients, the people we're talking to, really understand where they're coming from. We don't put everybody in front of everybody. My whole team doesn't sit in front of everybody. It's the people who are good at talking to people in an intimate setting who are sitting across the table. And then, then it's just going deeper into.
Because at the end of the day, it's the ability to say, is who you think you are truly who you are being perceived as from the people you are actually serving?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you get to that point of either seeing that it is in line or there's a disconnect, then there's a problem or issue, which then you now have really just one question is, how do we solve it?
Yeah.
Right? And that variance ends up being where your scope of work really starts coming into play.
That's right.
Of who, what, when, where, and how.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we speak to customers and employees. We don't just speak to customers or only employees, because then you're literally just getting one side of the equation.
So then to you entrepreneurs out there, stop being afraid of what people think about you. Just suck it up.
Yeah.
Because I find that people are afraid to sometimes say, what do people really think about me? Am I
Yeah.
am I really good enough?
It's the what if. It's the speculation. Speculation is the source of anxiety.
Yeah.
You're like, stop guessing, dude. Just go ask.
Yeah.
Just see what happens. You could know, we were talking about this before the show. Like, you could know somebody, you could be somebody's parent and not know them 100%. You could be someone's child or someone's lover or whatever. And you're going, no, I'm not going to ask. I know what they'll say. No, you don't actually. You don't know what they'll say. You might be right because you know them really well, but you don't know what they're going to say.
That's right.
Certainly not as an absolute. It's not the newlyweds game.
Yeah.
Actually it kind of is, but it's also innovative thinkers will do this. They are, they push the design thinking model to where they harp too much on the empathy part without actually asking anybody anything.
So one of the things I love about your area of trade, and you are consistently living in a world of creativity.
What do you mean by creativity?
Creating, developing, inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
You live in a world of possibility. Okay?
Sure.
And one of the things that I appreciate about the creatives is that you're, to me, much closer than others, adults, that forget their childhood, that when they were 5, 6, 7, that they had no fear. They just did. And they figured they'd come back and say, oh, well, that didn't work. You just try something else. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a form of appreciation. With that being said, though, life hasn't been all great either. Business is hard.
Yeah.
For the perspective of your journey of entrepreneurship and business and whatnot, what's been the hardest thing about running an agency, running a firm, running people, managing people?
Honestly, I think it's the uncertainty. Strategy comes from war. If you actually study the history of strategy, it's rooted in war. Sun Tzu, various Dutch generals, and so on. And what always exists in war? A losing side.
Yeah.
And strategy, in the simplest terms, is an informed opinion.
Yeah.
It's not an absolute to anything.
Yeah.
It's, you've done your work, therefore, we're going to do this. I know this, therefore this. But I don't know that the outcome is going to be what I want it to be.
So how do you personally, in retrospect, looking at those at a moment in time when you have had complete difficulty, how did you gravitate and who did you gravitate to help you get through it as an individual? Who were the individuals and what did they do or how did they help you get through it?
Yeah.
Did they have to kind of, Nader, shake you up, or was it you coming to them?
Yeah, you're one of them. It's both. It's both. Sometimes, I get stuck in my blinders.
As humans would.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not even a question of, I can do this myself. It's kind of a distrust because I have asked for help many, many, many times in my life. And it turns out either nothing happens or people say they're going to help out and they don't do anything. They're totally unreliable. And I get into a place where I get tired, man. I just get tired of asking.
Yeah.
When the result is literally nothing.
Yeah.
And I fall into this stupid place of head trash where I'm like, is everyone just useless? Like, do they even care?
Yeah.
Am I saying it in a way that makes it sound like I don't care?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is that
it might be just the wrong person.
Or it's the wrong person, which upsets me even more because I thought one thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, is this the wrong person? Are you not the person I thought you were? So it's like all of it's upsetting. And I get into a place where I'm like, then it turns into, screw it, I'm going to just do it myself.
Yeah.
Which, without money, a lot of money, isn't always helpful because you just need the resources. And doing, as we all know, we just talked about it for 20 minutes, doing everything yourself all the time for everyone is not sustainable.
It's not.
And, so then I have to wipe off my blinders and suck it up and go ask some more people.
That's right.
And ask new people and find new opportunities. And sometimes, again, yourself included and a few others here in my local vicinity who have very deliberately reached out to me and introduced me to other people and been like, you need to come with me to this event. You have to come to this thing. You have to come to this thing. And I'm grateful to those people.
Yeah. Did in these moments in the past that you've had in your journey, did you, because you're very tech savvy, or you at least have explored it into it, how have you gravitated to either engage or create resources or tools to help you streamline and just kind of like push things off to?
Oh, yeah. So, that's a fun question because, I was always very fast myself at just working. I was very fast to the point where
did everybody in your life knew that you were extremely brilliant, like very smart?
Not about brilliance or smart, just fast at doing what I needed to do or picking it up quickly or whatever. And I wouldn't go, I don't know. I can't really answer that question. But as far as, I was always sort of the wild card in PM, project management tests. Like I worked for an agency.
Just throw him in there.
Yeah. They were like, I want to see if this process works.
Yeah.
Or if he's going to, mess it up or whatever. And we introduced a new project management tool at an agency I worked at during my master's program. And I was a working student at the time, but I worked for 10 years plus. And they were like, we need to include him in that because, he just works super fast. He goes beyond the schedules. Like we have all this padding and so on. And they kept telling me, you need to work slower. I'm like, I'm not going to work slower. You need to figure out how to deal with this because I'm not working slower. I would go nuts.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I had to come up with ways to leverage the technology that we used in order to keep up with me in a weird way.
Yeah.
And,
no, I totally get that.
Like, I'm like, and, so now with AI introduced over has it been 3 years already? 2 years? Is it two and a bit? Last year it'll be almost a year now in the late spring of 2024, we were having a downtime. There was a lull in the market, as many of us know. and we had some ample time. And whenever that happens and we have less customer facing work, I always tell everyone, and do so myself, to just focus inward, reflect, optimize. How can you make things better and improve so that when the wave hits again, you're ready to go? So I put together my signature model, which is the inside, outside, in model. I took that and I created an entire sort of application for it to leverage AI to help through that and so on, and essentially increased our delivery time by 30%, reduced our delivery time by 30%.
That's significant.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We went from, so over 3 years, it was first 8 months, then it went to 6 months. Now it's 4 months.
That's awesome.
It changed everything. It changed everything.
So what do you want people to know about Blackribbit, what you're committed to, what is your brand promise to them?
If you work with us, you will have clarity. You will have absolute clarity. Your decision-making processes will be so much easier. You will be able to answer why people will want to buy from you and people want to work for you in a very simple, single statement. You will be able to answer that question. Whenever anyone goes, why would anyone do this? Why do you want to hire these people? Why is your onboarding like this? Why is your firing like this? Why is whatever? Why do you write your contracts like that? You can answer that question with a single line. And that line, by the way, is because we value X, Y, and Z, and we want people to experience A, B, and C. It'll simplify everything.
Well, as someone who's got through a process, I could attest to this, and I could tell you that I am a better person. I am a better individual. I'm a better leader. I'm a better human because of that process.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.